What's up YouTube? I'm Josh Newland from Newland Performance, and in this video I'm going to explain how you should have phone calls with college coaches. So a few days ago, one of my old high school teammates asked me, what should I talk about in phone calls with coaches, especially right now. There's not a whole lot to talk about because there's not training and games, and there's barely even soccer happening right now across the world. So it kind of made me realize I should probably make a whole video about phone calls because they are very important, and a lot of schools you aren't going to be able to visit, or you're only going to be able to visit once, like I mentioned in one of my last videos. So phone calls are probably the second best way to communicate with coaches, because in emails, like I've explained before, you want to keep them shorter, more direct. You can ask those open-ended questions, but don't expect super long and detailed responses. In phone calls, like visits, kind of show that the coach is pretty interested and there's mutual interest. Coaches are going to take 30 seconds to reply to a lot of different athletes, but they're not going to take 15 to 30 minutes to actually talk on the phone with a lot of different athletes and recruits. And then same goes for you. You're probably not going to, if your list is like 80 schools like mine was, you're probably not going to be able to talk to all those coaches for 15 to 30 minutes on the phone. So generally the overarching, what most of my points come back to, is that in the phone calls, you should be asking questions and talking about things that are hard to talk about over email, but you should also distinguish between, if you're going to visit, ask different questions on the phone call than you would at the visit. And then also on the visit, there will probably be a lot of things that come up while you're there, things you'll see that will give you more questions and more things to wonder about. You also need to be ready for their questions, because like I said, they're not just going to call any recruit, any old athlete out there. They have some genuine interest, just like you should if you're calling them. So first of all, be prepared for questions about grades and academics. It's kind of surprising how many people really don't know their own grades or their GPA, or they just forget their test scores. So before your phone call, just check your latest transcript, check your grades again, test scores, just so you're ready, because that's something I can guarantee you they'll probably ask. And then soccer-wise, also be ready for those kind of questions from them. Obviously right now, a lot of clubs probably aren't training and still very unclear about what's going to happen in the fall as far as when seasons start. But if you're watching this a different time from now, or it is already clear for you what the schedule is going to look like, be ready for questions from coaches about, are you going to any out-of-state tournaments? Are there any showcase tournaments? Are you going to these camps? Then just be ready, know your stats, know the different awards and achievements you've gotten. And then also when it comes to their school, be ready for questions like, have you applied yet? Have you looked up how much the dorms cost, how much these things cost? I know it's easy sometimes, just let your mom or dad do all that research for you and do some of those things for you. But even if they are looking those things up for you, still ask them and make sure they tell you what they found out. Because if you tell the coach, I have no clue how much it costs, I have no clue about this or that, about your school, they're going to take that as maybe you're not super interested and their school isn't one of your top picks. So overall, just prepare yourself for those questions. Also make it so you're not as nervous when you go to call them, because you already have answers ready or things in the back of your mind, and you don't have to hesitate and think about it. And then obviously have some of your own questions. I've said in emails, a lot of times it's good to end it with a question. That means they're more likely to reply. That will also show your interest. Same thing with phone call. Questions, no matter who you're talking to in any sort of conversation, they always reflect, even if it doesn't necessarily mean that, they always are taken as, okay, they're interested. I think the phone call is one of the best times to ask them more soccer program specific questions. For example, scholarships. Obviously D3 don't give out athletic scholarships, but pretty much every other level of college soccer teams can offer athletic scholarships. So ask them, what is the average scholarship, athletic scholarship for a player on your team? And also ask them, what's the average for incoming freshmen? Can the scholarship significantly change from freshman year, sophomore year? Ask them what a typical day of one of their players at their school is like. When do they normally get out of classes? When do they start classes? What time are typically practices? Are there a lot of two-a-days in the preseason? When's their free time? What is, the typical day for them off-season versus in-season? Another good question is ask them, how do they handle it when you're on the road And how do you handle it with classes? Because you're gonna miss classes. It's easy to fall behind on assignments, easy to not study over the weekend when you're on and playing games. So ask them, how do you handle that? How do you make sure your students still get the good grades, and that even though they're missing classes, they still make up for it? And what's that interaction like between players and professors? This can also be a good time just to ask them about the conference. What's the competition like? Explain to me what's different about NAIA, what's different about D3, D2, D1. How is the season ran? Because when I came in as a freshman, I thought I had a generally good idea of college soccer, but there's still a lot of things about the season and just things that surprised me. And even making my YouTube channel, it's like, for us players, once we're in it, some of it is kind of common sense, but then you see, thinking about just a year ago, I didn't know half this stuff. I didn't know how most of this worked. So even though the big things you're probably concerned about right now are cost, location, the academic side, can I get in, those kind of things, you also need to think about, okay, when I'm there, what will it be like? Instead of just trying to get there, trying to make it happen, you also got to think ahead of what will it be like actually being a student, actually being an athlete here. And those are kind of just some general questions you can ask no matter the school. Again, every school is going to be different. Every school, you're going to have specific things you want to know about them. They might be a religious university and you have questions, do I have to take certain classes because you're a Christian university or a Catholic university? So you do want to do your research ahead of time just to come up with questions. And then again, like I said, mostly soccer because that's what the coach is going to know most about. But it can also be good to ask them, what do you suggest when I apply? When should I apply to your school? And maybe if you've had a hard time reaching financial services, admissions, just trying to talk to them and ask them things, that's a good point to tell the coach, hey, I've been kind of having trouble here. And if he's interested, he'll make sure that you get a number, you get someone to talk to, and it'll just be better because you'll be on the same page across the board with admissions, financial aid, registering for classes, the coach. So don't expect him to have all those answers that aren't soccer related, but he should definitely know somebody or be able to do something that can point you in the right direction when it comes to those other questions. And this is also another big tip I suggest. Sometimes it's good just to have a phone call with just you and the coach, and maybe just have ask your parents ahead of time, do you have any questions you'd want to know from the coach? But it can also be a good idea ahead of time too to tell the coach, is it alright if I have my dad on the phone call too, or my mom, or both my parents, because they're going to have questions that you're probably not thinking about. Like I said, when you just have the dream and the goal of playing college soccer, a lot of times your focus is just to make it happen instead of thinking about, once I'm there, once I'm on the team, what is it going to be like? Am I going to be miserable? Am I going to be swamped? Is it going to feel like I have no free time? So that's when your parents might ask those questions. What is it really like to go to that school? Or how do I deal with picking classes? Those kind of questions that might not be in your head yet. So that can also be a good thing to have your parents on the call with you as well. When you're on a phone call, another good tip is, even just have a notepad and write things down. If he's giving you a lot of numbers, this is the average scholarship. This is the max scholarship for the best player on the team. These are the number of players on the team. This is how many games we play in a season. If he's hitting you with a lot of things that you're probably going to forget some of them, it can be good just to have something with you to write stuff down, because he's going to know better than anyone what the team's like. And especially if you're on your own and you're not with your parents on the call, they might get mad if they're asking you, oh, well, did you ask him this question and how do you answer? And then I don't remember. So it's just better safe than sorry. Write it down. That'll also help you later on comparing schools. This coach, he said this about scholarships, about players and things like that. And then this coach, he said that. You can have that direct comparison instead of just vaguely remembering something, or I thought he said this. So it does seem kind of extra, but it never hurts. So I know overall these are some general tips, but I can't tell you exactly for your situation, for the school you're trying to go to, what questions you should ask. These are more general questions, which are of course good to ask, but you also have to do the research on your own. Like I said, no two schools are the same, no two coaches are the same, no two players or recruits are the same. So remember, it's your responsibility to be prepared for the call, be prepared for questions to be asked to you, be prepared to ask questions, make sure they're relevant, and remember that he's a soccer coach. He doesn't have the time to know everything about financial services, about the dorms, about tuition, about all these things. He can point you in the right direction, and he definitely knows people and has resources, but don't expect too much from the coach himself. And like I've said in other videos, when you're emailing, that's a good thing to put in your emails. You know, can we set up a phone call? Because then you get the chance to talk about a lot more things. And if you're like me and it's hard to voice, you know, what you're wondering, what you're saying, and get a clear answer that makes sense to you over text or email, then it's good to have a call and really talk through and explain and clear things up. So phone calls are something that you should be actively pursuing, trying to make them happen. So hopefully this could help you guys out, at least give you an idea what phone calls are like, of, you know, how prepared you should be and what to talk about in them. Hopefully you can take away some things from this video and apply them to when you have your phone calls. Like I said, these are important. They're one of the best and most efficient ways for you to get information. You can just do it from your living room for, you know, a lot of times no longer than 45 minutes if the coach is really interested and wants to hold a conversation with you. And it's also just, again, another good way to understand the coach's mindset, his attitude, his personality, and for him to, you know, at least see a little bit what your personality is like, what your mindset and attitude is, and put a voice to your name, and you can do the same for him. So be sure to comment down below any other questions you might have about phone calls, any things that you want me to answer for you. If you've already committed or you've had quite a few phone calls, let me know what those are like, how many you've had, what your experiences are with them. If you enjoyed this video and want to see others like it, be sure to like and subscribe. Once you've subscribed, be sure to hit the bell icon next to it so you'll be notified whenever a new video is released. This series I'm going to wrap up in a couple weeks, and if you want to know when these videos are released, turn on those notifications, it'll let you know. But thanks again, and I'll see you on the next one.